tell us a little bit about what Exponent's all about.
Hey, so Exponent is actually about quite a few things, but one of the first things, well, I guess basically it's an engineering consulting firm, which when said inspires a lot of different thoughts. But mostly we focus on failure analysis, so about how things break. And traditionally, we started way back in Stanford. We've got large roots there. It's one of those Stanford startups where a few grad students get together at the Oasis, and then they say, hey, let's start a company. But this isn't, Silicon Valley times. This is back in the 60s. And, originally we started in, bridge failure. So like if a bridge fell or a plane fell out of the sky, that's something we'll be involved in. But lately we've gotten a lot more into high tech, and that's kind of where more my field is. I'm an electrical engineer by training. So we've gotten a lot into consumer electronics, like phones, TVs, computers, that kind of stuff. And these days we still primarily wear ourselves in failure. So whenever things aren't working like they're supposed to, if we have return units, things blow up or catch on fire, that's where we get involved in. But we also have done a lot of things on the other side, whereas before the products are designed, we've helped a lot of companies work with prototyping and working out the bugs in their manufacturing and things like that.
Yeah, I'll just add a few more pieces of information. So now we have over 700 consultants with Exponent. Of those, over 425 hold a PhD. As Ed mentioned, we cover many of the engineering and science disciplines, so we're certainly interested in talking to PhD students in engineering and science. Also, as Ed mentioned, historically we've done a lot of work in failure analysis, accident investigation. As you read about failures and accidents in the news at a national level, there is a good chance that we are doing analysis on those projects. But in addition to that, we do quite a bit of work with industrial clients that make products, right? So that could be design consulting, product and process improvements, risk assessments, really any engineering or science problems they may have from the point of conception, design, manufacturing, and certainly want some things out in the field. So we work on things that you use every day. We can't put all of this up on our website, so that's why I'm mentioning it here today.
And so kind of diving into, since we actually have a Stanford alum here in Ed. Ed, tell us a little bit about your track from Stanford. I know it's something like 10 years on the farm, all the way to Stanford.
I've been on Stanford for quite a while. I actually started Stanford back in undergrad, so I went Stanford through and through. If you cut me, I pretty much bleed cardinal red at this point. So I was there for 11 years, and I started with physics and then switched to electrical engineering in grad school. And oddly enough, I think I'm one of the very few students who didn't know much about Exponent when I was going through school, and it wasn't until one of the career fairs when I ran into Jenny, and then I found out, oh, there's this whole thing called engineering consultant. I have no idea what that is. Went over for a lunch, found out more about it, and pretty much found that, wow, this is my dream job that I never knew that I had a dream for.
And you mentioned, like, I didn't know about engineering consulting. Talk to us a little bit about the difference between, like, management consulting and engineering consulting now that you're in it.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a world of difference, at least from, I've never done management consulting, but my perception of management consulting is very different from what engineering consulting is about. I'd say a few of the biggest differences is, one, we don't have to travel all the time because of what we do. Some people do end up traveling, say, to accident sites and whatnot, but as far as the exposure that I've been involved in, since I work with a lot of high-tech companies, most of the stuff is product related, so they'll either send us samples or a lot of them are in Silicon Valley. So I can stay at home and have a real life, and that's been pretty important for me. The other part is I think there's a lot better work-life balance. So we really kind of cherish maintaining kind of employee morale as well as personality. And so it's not about working 80-hour days or 80-hour weeks. And I'd say that's kind of a big difference between, like initial difference between engineering consulting and management consulting. Fundamentally speaking, though, on a kind of actually the work we do, the difference is that it's much more technical. I would say it's focused in the science rather than focused on the business aspect. We do give a comprehensive idea of what's going on. So whenever I give a scientific recommendation on a product, I always put myself in a position. We, as we at Exponent, kind of look at things holistically and say, well, how does this affect, this one failure? How does this affect your manufacturing? How does that affect your business, point of view? Kind of put ourselves in our client's point of view. But we are definitely much more technically oriented in what kind of advice we give, rather than kind of talking about layoffs or market strategy and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. What Ed said, you will be doing engineering and science if you join Exponent. And one final addition is that we work on many projects at a time. And that structurally is a little bit different than the business management firms in that here you may have 5 to 10 projects that are on your plate in any given week versus focusing on one project for 6 months or so.
And I do want to highlight Ed's commitment to his alma mater. Ed, I think you're on vacation right now tuning in,
yeah.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm over in sunny Singapore. That's the tropical background that you see back there. But I heard that there was something related to Stanford, and I can't help myself.
Yeah, we just want to thank you for making the time. I think it's like barely 8 a.m. over there.
Yeah, no problem.
And so kind of diving into some of the stuff that you're doing, and I know you can only say so much, let's see how much you can answer this one. So what's one of the harder problems you've worked on, one that after you finished made you go like, heck yeah, I did that?
Well, I think that's actually two different things. So I have a lot of problems where I work on, and it's like always a heck yeah kind of thing. And that's one of the things that I love about this job is it's so stimulating that almost every day there's some problem where you come up with an interesting fix and you kind of have that eureka moment. But I would say if I wanted to go to one of the harder problems, it would be, or I would say more daunting problems approaching it. This was one of our longer term projects that I was involved in, and this one was a prototyping project. So essentially we were hired on by a company to work on this prototype that used optical interferometry to measure acoustics, which is blah, 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 a lot of technical jargon. But essentially, it was a prototype that somebody developed, and the company decided that they needed to increase the sensitivity by 10 times in order to make it viable or make it appealing so that they could sell it. They had some sort of market strategy related to that. The task that we were given was to make that happen within 1 month. And so that is not a very simple thing. This is something that's not consumer ready. It's definitely straight from a research lab. A professor had just finished it up. And essentially I was told, make it 10 times better, which to me sounded like a PhD job. So that, I think, and I was only 3 months in at the time, and I was given this job, and I think that was something that I felt, wow, I don't know if we can do this. But surely enough, we put our heads together and kind of did it, and achieved it beyond kind of what we did it very technically, did it step by step. And it's one of those things that I think I really love about Exponent is that the pace is not what I'm used to in academia. Things move really quickly, ideas kind of happen, they really kind of just sprout up, and then we immediately act on it. And there's really very little delay time between the conception of idea and carrying it through. And so that was one of those like, wow, did I really just do that? And what was I doing with the last 7 years of my life that I wasn't doing this?
So on that note of like, oh my gosh, did I just do that? I want to go to a crowdsourced question that we have, and it's this. How specific does the technical stuff get? Do you consider yourself an expert or more a broad knowledge consultant?
I think that's a very interesting question. I would say that the specificity gets really deep in the stuff that we work with. Now, whether or not I would call myself an expert is kind of more of a personal thing. It's kind of, I personally have some issue claiming I'm an expert depending on who I'm talking to, just because there's always the idea of like there's someone else out there, and what does it even mean to be an expert? Did I, live and breathe this one subject my entire life? But I would say that the difference is, for me, the way I look at it is this, is that the whole point of being a PhD graduate student from Stanford is so that I don't say that I'm an expert at like this one product or this one aspect. it's saying that, well, I did all this training so that I can have the ability to do whatever is thrown in front of me. That I might not be an expert today, but I can become an expert 5 minutes later once you tell me what the problem is about. And I think that's kind of the whole point of getting a PhD at Stanford. And I think that's kind of what Exponent really utilizes in its consultants, where there's a lot of technical background, but I don't necessarily have to have worked on this exact product to be able to come in here and figure out what's going wrong or come up with a solution that no one else has ever thought of.
And I'm sure you did have a lot of options after you finished up that PhD and your graduate work at Stanford. Mm-hmm. So can you talk to our students a little bit about some of the options you were considering, and how did you wind up landing on such a great choice at Exponent?
Sure. I was looking pretty much everywhere. I didn't really filter too hard on what kind of job, so I was talking to some of the national labs, some of the larger consumer electronic companies nearby, some of the more fabrication-oriented kind of material, like fabrication-oriented equipment manufacturing companies or semiconductor material companies, and also a number of startups that were working on pretty interesting ideas. I ended up landing with Exponent because throughout the interview process, I felt that what they cared about in kind of developing their employees for the long term matched up with what I wanted personally. And the main thing that I saw was that really what we focus on at Exponent is creating relationships, not only within the people that work with each other, but also the whole point of kind of engineering. It's a little bit beyond just being an engineering consultant and giving good advice, but we focus a lot on creating relationships with the people that we work with, our clients, so that it's not just a one-off, here, let me fix this, and then I'm out of here, but let me fix this, let me be your friend and give you some real advice of, maybe you came to us with this project and you want us to do this scientific task, but the more I get to know you, I realize, I don't think this is what you really need to solve your problem. Maybe there's this other experiment that you want to try out instead, and it'll cost you 10 times less. But let me be your friend and really help you out and kind of forge that long-lasting relationship. And for me, that's something that I care a lot about in terms of, just how I want to live my life and what I find important. So I found that that was kind of the perfect marriage of, where I wanted to go personally and career developmentally.
As you talk about career development there, talk to us a little bit about kind of career trajectory for someone starting out at Exponent, and I guess that could be for either of you there.
Sure. I can go ahead and start, since I guess I know the first half quite a bit. Career trajectory-wise, we have definitely titles here at Exponent, but one thing that I like a lot about Exponent is that regardless of title, function-wise, you can pretty much do anything. So in the beginning, it's kind of like an apprenticeship program. When you're starting something new, you don't necessarily know all the ins and outs and all the technical details of a whole new field. And so in the beginning, it's a lot of working on small teams and learning the technical ability and kind of getting some sort of technical expertise or familiarity with a certain type of problem. So for example, I've worked a lot with lasers in the past year as well as batteries, and so now I have quite a bit of knowledge base on this kind of stuff. Beyond that, what we try to do in terms of career development is after we've kind of gotten our technical background and have internal connections, eventually we bump up and kind of get more into project management roles where we're looking at larger tasks and managing, it's kind of essentially leading a small team on solving a problem. And this is not something that you're officially given a title for necessarily, but it's more like a task-on-task basis. If I happen to be the person who, say, is most trusted by the senior person in charge and they don't have time to take care of it, then I end up being the liaison and kind of organizing all the other people and doing the work. Eventually, the goal is to start building up business relationships that, as I start talking to more clients at reports and things like that, that eventually they start trusting me as an individual and will start calling me. And that's kind of where we move from the associate level up into the management level, where it's a lot about creating client relationship, generating business for Exponent, bringing in projects or proposing projects to clients. And that's kind of the rough trajectory, I would say, of a career at Exponent?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very flat firm, as Ed mentioned, and it's flat because there are really only 5 titles. So if you are a consultant with Exponent, you will be at one of those 5 levels your entire career path at Exponent. But there are many ways to be successful within that track. And I'll say first, that track, you will always be doing technical work. So we don't have a separate management track and then technical track. So all of our consultants are doing engineering and science their entire careers with us. In terms of your development, development is huge. It's probably no surprise given that we are a consulting firm. But your development will also depend on your background, your interests, your goals, and really what you want to pursue once you get here. And you may not know when you join. That's expected. That's okay. We hire a lot of people right out of PhD programs. We provide you with many opportunities, and you're encouraged to pursue the things that you're interested in. Big development activities would be speaking at conferences, publishing, teaching, professional licenses and associations, national standards committees, regulatory things. So there's a lot of opportunity, and again, it will be depending on what you find interesting and what's relevant for the goals that you have.
So since we just have this great tie with Stanford and Ed here, like Ed, thinking back to that time, are there any like projects, courses, experiences in those 10 years that really did turn out to be super relevant and maybe one step further important as you think about the work you're doing at Exponent now?
Yeah, I would say that definitely there are a few classes that stuck out, not just for my work at Exponent, but just kind of for me in general. Because for me, I think, like I mentioned earlier, the trajectory that Exponent put me on is very much the direction that I wanted to go in myself. I would say that actually the most influential class that I took was not even a technical class, but was a class that I sampled in the business school. It was called Compassion and Leadership. It was taught through kind of a C-Care program that's developed over there, and it was really mind-blowing for me, and gave me a really fundamental philosophy on relationships and empathy for other people and things like that. I would say for the broader audience, not just say, oh, everyone go take this class, but I would say that the most important thing that I'd learned from my entire career at Stanford is the classes that I end up getting the most from were the ones that I really wanted to take. It's not, I want to learn a specific skill and I want to, integrate some knowledge into my head, but it was like I have personal interest or I have passion in finding out something, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a direct benefit to me right away, but because of my passion for it, it just kind of becomes more a part of me, and it ends up being useful in ways that I don't think are easily quantifiable.
And I mean, you guys are just doing such an awesome job sharing a little bit about Exponent. I'm sure students are really interested in how they might get involved. So I know you're going to be on campus this week and next week as well. Jenny, want to hit on that?
Sure. So the thing that I want to emphasize is to meet us in person. The best way to learn about us, the best way to apply is to meet us in person. So if you're graduating this year, if you're graduating in 4 years, now is the time to start talking to us or any company that you might be interested in. So we are hosting an info session for PhD students and postdocs. It will be next Thursday, October 8th at 6 p.m. at Tressiter. So it'll be up on the second floor in the Oak Lounge. We are bringing consultants from all of our disciplines. We are going to give a presentation that talks about, what does it mean to be a consultant? We'll have a corporate VP and director, as well as recent graduates out of Stanford who can share their perspective. So it's a great chance to meet us. Then we'll also this week on Thursday be at the career fair. We'll have several of us there as well. And if you happen to be a mechanical engineer, we are hosting a mechanical engineering seminar. It's also this Thursday after the career fair at 5 p.m. in Durand 450. And we'll have other events throughout the year. I would say even if you're interested in learning more, let me know and I can send you that information.
And so being real specific, what are you guys hiring for? Kind of full-time intern, and what year in school are you looking for as well?
Sure. So we are looking for full-time consulting staff members, so that will be students finishing their PhD and postdocs. So we don't have an internship program available at this time, but no need to wait, and you don't need to wait and talk to us once you're done. Like I was saying, talk to us now. It always takes a lot longer to figure out what you want to do than you think it will, and talk to people. And so even if you're not done yet, talk to us now. We'll take a resume now, and we'll stay in touch with you. But in terms of which disciplines, I mean, we cover over 90 disciplines, so most of you in engineering and science may have a technical fit within our firm, so we'd encourage you to meet with us.
All right, and what's the process like from giving your resume at the career fair all the way to someone getting an actual job offer? What happens in all the way A to Z there?
Sure, I'll start, and then Ed, you can share what it was like from your perspective going through the process. So typically, like I said, to meet us whenever possible. The process is often a couple of phone interviews. It may be a lunch visit to our office if you're local, such as at Stanford. And the final step with us is a full-day formal interview. We have you deliver a technical presentation on that day, and you have a chance to meet individually with team members when you'd come in for that formal interview. My general advice is to certainly to be yourself. Consulting is certainly, we are looking for people who have certain technical depth and an understanding of the fundamentals in whatever engineering and science discipline you're in. But the other big piece of it is being able to communicate what you've done and build relationships with your coworkers and clients and everyone. So, we want to get to know you, and so don't be too nervous for the interview.
Ed, do you have any specific advice as well, having gone through the interview process too?
Not much more different than what Jenny was saying, so kind of echoing what she was saying, I would say don't check your personality at the door. I think that a big part of an interview is just to really get to know a person, and not just to, that's the point of getting an interview rather than just looking at a resume. I don't want to just know about what skills you have or what things you've done, but I would like some personality. So even if we're talking about technical things, I want to know your perspective on it. Like, what are your opinions on the work that you've done, not just what you've published? Was it easy? Was it hard? Tell me about your perspective on it. And also, of course, the personality factor, whether or not we can get along. Is this someone that's easy to get along with? Do you have passion? Are you interested in learning something new? One thing I would say is that it's not necessarily about finding, is this a perfect technical fit? Can you do the job starting? We don't really expect that for most of the people that we hire, because there's no failure analysis kind of category really in graduate school. So there's no expectation to kind of just jump in and be able to do the work right away or be able to start a new branch of business. It's much more, are you someone who has some technical background, who's strong in their fundamentals? Are you someone who is curious in learning about new things? Are you excited about learning new techniques or kind of exploring new areas? We've got a lot of people in electrical engineering who come from an applied physics background. So they might have worked on very esoteric things in the past, such as linear accelerators or topological insulators and crazy things like that. And those aren't really consumer electronics or applicable to industry yet. But if they're interested in applying their knowledge to broader areas, then that's something that's totally workable.
And I would add, too, just as a piece of advice for all of you, to think about what criteria are most important to you. The interview is also a great chance for you to learn what you need to know about the company so that you can decide if it's a good fit for you, right? It is two ways. And so thinking about, what is going to make you happy and leave you feeling fulfilled with your choice of careers. Is it an opportunity to learn? Is it the actual work you'd be doing? Is it work-life balance or flexibility of schedule? There's no right answer because it's different for everyone. So think about what is most important to you, and then make sure that you're asking questions in those areas. And you're looking for examples of people who are able to balance the things that you're looking for, and they have those things in their life as well.
Last two questions here. Don't want to take too much of your morning there, Ed, and then Jenny,
totally fine.
The beginning of your evening. So for Jenny, what makes a candidate stand out to you, and more tangibly, what kind of content on the CV or resume,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes will make you say, yeah, this is someone we think we need to interview.
Yeah. So certainly having a PhD from a great school like Stanford is a good starting point for everyone. But I think we certainly want to see a full CV. And that may not be the case for everywhere that you are applying, but for us, we want to see all of your presentations, your publications. What did you do with your PhD work? You've spent 4 or 5 years on it. Probably the number one thing I hear from hiring managers is, but what did this person do? Because they gave us a one-page resume and there's 2 bullet points under all of your PhD research. So be sure to send us a really full CV. And be sure to include the things that are maybe outside of just your specific thesis work. So any internships or any leadership that you've been a part of, whether it's a student group or a personal hobby. Other things that may be entrepreneurial. We are looking for people who have demonstrated the leadership and these other softer skills throughout their career. And so if there is a way for you to get all of those things on your CV, that really stands out as somebody who has demonstrated that they have these other skills through the activities that they've been doing all along.
All right, and last question, toss it out there to Ed. Ed, what advice do you have for Stanford students focused on making sure they leave school with the skills and experiences that will just make them super invaluable to an employer? And I ask you that because clearly you're winning in life.
Thanks. I'd like to think so. I would say the biggest thing at Stanford is not learning technical skills, and I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. I think that the whole point of PhD, again, is so that you have the ability to do anything, that you're not tied down to just one specific job title or one specific role in a company. And I think that the point of the PhD, if you were to talk education with me, I would say the point of undergrad is so you can learn stuff, learn how to learn. And the point of PhD is to learn how to do things that no one has ever done before. Because I think that it's very easy when you're given a task that nobody's ever done to just freeze. And it takes some sort of mental training to be able to break out of that and to be able to come up with ideas under the pressure, under the gun. And I think that's the whole point of PhD training. So the more that you can get out of your program to train that part of yourself, so whether that's taking more risks in your experimentations or trying out new things, whether it's taking classes that are not within your traditional core set that is in your requirement, or taking part in groups or activities or clubs at Stanford, anything that kind of pushes that boundary of, well, no one's ever done this before. I might be a little bit scared, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways, and then learn that, oh, I have the ability to kind of rock it when I don't know the answer at the end of the tunnel. I think that's the essential skill that people are looking for in a PhD from Stanford.
All right, so I think we'll end it there. I want to thank you very much, Jenny, Ed, and Exponent for coming on Unplugged at Stanford. Hopefully students will be meeting you this week and in the coming few weeks here, I guess, at Stanford. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your morning and evening.
All right.
Thanks for including us. Thank you.